Hi, my name is Brad Zdenek. I'm the innovation strategist with the Nittany AI Alliance, and I have the pleasure of running the Nittany AI Challenge, which is probably the reason that you're all here with with me tonight. I've been running this since 2017 when we ran the Nittany Watson Challenge. It was focused on a single technology, and the program has grown considerably over the last few years. But one of the things that I've been able to do is to learn a lot of examples of great work and see some great examples of how individuals have been able to be successful in the proposal phase, in the idea phase of this challenge. Some of the things that they've done that have impressed us, that have left impressions on us. And even though it is not always indicative of the teams that make it all the way to the minimal viable product phase and get the huge checks at the end. Sometimes it is correlated. And so what I want to do is just kind of walk you through some of those best practices we've learned over the last few years. To start, the first thing to look at is our timeline here, just to kind of put all of this in context. Right now, we are in that idea phase, formation and validation phase, which, if you have not seen, about a week and a half ago, I believe, we changed the due date for the ideas. Originally, it was January 29th, 8 days from now. We changed that mostly because of all the things that you guys are going through with the change in the start date, with the change in the date of you guys coming back in person. I decided that it was just a little too much for you, and so I wanted to give you a little bit more breathing space. So February 12th is the new date for the ideas. At that point, we will pick 20 teams to receive $500 apiece and to receive some support from us in building a prototype. Even if you were not selected as one of those 20, you can still move forward and submit a prototype. All that means is that you don't get the $500 at this phase. You are still eligible for the $1,500 at the next phase. So it's something to keep in mind as we go along. Um, so what is the proposal? What are we looking for on February 12th? Well, there are 4 sections, 300 words apiece. If you haven't tried to write something in 300 words before, get a broad thought out in 300 words, you don't realize quite how difficult that is. Very often you worry about having to write enough. In this case, it's being able to be so succinct that you can fit your big ideas within 300 word sections. And it's more challenging than it might seem at first. Unfortunately, some teams in the past have decided to, I mean, everybody waits until the last minute. Let's just be honest here. But we have had teams that thought that they could wait until the last minute because it's only 300 words a section, it's only 1,200 words total. And then they've hit the stark realization that doing that is really tough at times. So, what are the 4 sections? The 4 sections are the problem description, problem solution, the proposed solution, the use of AI technologies, and team capabilities. So, basically, what this is, if I were to break it down, it's what's the problem and why is it a problem? What's the thing you see in the world that you want to fix? This is all about AI for good. What is the good that you've identified? So, what's the problem and why is it a problem? Next section, what's your solution? How are you going to address that thing? What are you going to do to move the needle and make the world a better place? Third section, how are you going to use AI to do that? How's it going to fit in? Is this a chatbot? Is this a neural network? Is this data visualization? Is this natural language processing or computer vision? Or, what is it that you're using here? What are the AI technologies? We'll talk about each one of these in depth in a few minutes. And then finally, team capabilities. Who's your team? Who are you bringing to the table to actually create this solution? So let's kind of jump into these section by section and get some tips and tricks on each one. The first one is that problem description. That what is the thing that you see in the world that you want to fix and why is it a problem? And before I jump into the details of this, I want to zoom out a little bit and talk about something that I think is probably the most important component of this entire proposal process. The number one thing you have to do in order to be successful in this challenge, in this proposal phase of the challenge in particular, in being selected, and that is convincing the reviewers that read your proposal that what you did, what you're proposing matters, that we should care. And if you haven't read it before or watched any of his videos, I highly encourage you to Google or go onto YouTube and search Simon Sinek and his video on Start with Why. It's an old TED Talk, terrible audio. He has to switch mics in the middle. It looks like it's a lo-fi high school production of a TED Talk, but it is phenomenal. And he has since written a book and gotten famous, and he does a whole consulting gig around this. But the idea is that when you're trying to convince people of something, whether it be in business, whether it be in marketing, whether it be in proposals, you have to start with why. And human nature tends to have you start with what. Now, dig into this just a little bit. So, the why. What is the why? The why is your purpose. It's the thing that gets you up in the morning. It's the thing that is going to drive you to continue to work on this project on those late evenings, on those weekends when you've had a hard week of classes. What is going to drive you to continue to work on this thing? What is your purpose, your cause, your motivation? Next is the how. The how is kind of the process that you go through, the process that you're going to enact in order to realize the why. How are you going to get to that thing? What are the specific actions you're going to take? And then finally, the what. The what are you going to do? And it's the result of the why. It's the proof that you have done something to address the why. Now, let me put this in context for you within kind of the Nittany AI challenge and a team that we had last year. This team did a great job of starting with the why. But let me tell you how most teams would submit a proposal. Now, what they did was they created a language literacy application that enabled teachers, particularly in two developing nations, um, to allow teachers to be able to teach English to a larger group of people than they would otherwise be able to. It was English language assessment needs to be done before a teacher can properly teach English to his or her students. Um, and at the moment, it's a one-on-one process, and you can see that's a huge bottleneck. And what they wanted to do was create an application that could do that quicker and easier and better. Um, Now, most teams would start with we are going to build an English language literacy app that can help and would continue on from there. And then they describe what it would do. They describe the what and the how. And then very often they'd stop. What I propose to you and what I am saying I have seen be the most successful in proposals has been those teams like this one that start with the why. And the way this team started with why was they started with a personal story from the team leader who said, when I was a kid, I had access to English language learning that allowed me to find advantages that were not available to my peers. And that ability is what allowed me to come to Penn State and get the degree I'm getting, and to find the success that I have had. Now, here's some evidence of the numbers, and then they went through a little bit of research and cited a couple journal articles and proved that it wasn't just a personal experience, but brought it up to the evidence. But in the first three sentences of that proposal, I was hooked. I said, yes, we need to do this. I hadn't even gotten to their proposed solution yet, but the why spoke to me. And it said a couple things to me. Number one, it told me this is a real problem. Number two, it told me that this could potentially have an impact. And number three, it told me this team is motivated to do it. They are not going to get distracted 2 weeks in and not be able to build a prototype. They're in it for the long haul. The team started with why and then built out from there. I highly encourage you to think about what your why is for whatever solution you're coming up with and start there when writing your proposal. Personal stories are perfectly fine. When you write this first section of the proposal, you start with the why. If it's something's personally meaningful to you, like the example I just gave, you put it there. I had probably one of the most heartbreaking stories that I had in a proposal once was a young woman who had a story of her brother being killed by a firearm in the house, accidental discharge. And she wanted to create an AI-based system for disabling firearms, essentially a firearm, not just a lock on the trigger, but that it would not fire if it was aimed at a person, if it identified a person in front of it, um, a particular person. That story obviously had a huge impact as I heard about it. I have had plenty of stories about individuals with members who have family members on the autism spectrum and the struggles that the family deals with and solutions to those types of struggles. If you have a personal story and you're comfortable telling it, tell it here. Don't have that be everything because I don't want to know that this is an N of one for the problem. I want to know that it's a broader problem, but start with that. Appeal to me as an individual and have me understand what your struggle is and then build out the evidence for how this is also a wider problem. And you do that by then, after that personal story, citing publications and conversations with subject matter experts, people who work in the field, people who are doing the thing that you're looking at doing and understand what the challenges are and what the solutions look like and cite those individuals. And we'll get a little bit later, I'll talk about letters of support as well, which is another important thing. So that's kind of that first section. So what is the problem and why is it a problem? Now you've convinced me of that. You've kept me reading. I'm saying, all right, yeah, this sounds good. Yeah, what do they want to do? How are they going to address that? And we hit the second 300 word section, proposed solution. Now for this, um, one of the things that most teams struggle with when writing this proposal is figuring out the scale. You know, how far do you go? Do you give me just exactly what you think you're going to be able to deliver on? Do you undersell it and say, no, I'm only going to be able to do this, even though you know you could probably do more because you want to impress me later on? Or do you go really big? I have to say, if I were weighing these and saying which one you should err toward, I would say go big, be aspirational, think about the big picture. At the same time, be slightly realistic. Don't tell me that you're going to bring about world peace. Don't tell me that you are going to solve hunger, but do tell me something beyond you're going to be able to help this one discrete food pantry in State College, Pennsylvania, better track their inventory. Go beyond that and somewhere short of the impossible. And very often, a way of doing that is to be aspirational and go big, but at the same time, describe discrete phases that let us know that you understand that this is aspirational. You understand that you're probably never going to get there within the Nittany AI challenge. This is what you're driving toward. But here are a couple discrete things that you're going to get to. So in the example I just gave, solving hunger in food pantries, you're not going to say you're going to solve hunger, but you say that you are going to, greatly increase the efficiency by which food pantries are able to operate. You're going to start with the food pantry in State College, Pennsylvania, or at Penn State, and the food pantry that they offer there for students. And you're going to start there. And if you have time and ability and success, you're going to scale it up to Center County broadly. And and then once the challenge is over, maybe you're going to go even bigger. So that's kind of how you tease that out a little bit. But please, don't give me a solution that I know that you're going to deliver 100% on, because that tells me you're not striving enough. You're not going big enough. Also keep in mind the practical. And you'll see that in the review criteria coming up, and we'll kind of thread that needle a little bit as we talk about the criteria. So you've told me what the problem is. You've told me what your solution is. Now you need to tell me who. Who is going to do this thing? Who have you assembled together to be able to find success within the challenge? Couple things to think about when talking about your team capabilities. Number one, by time you put fingers to keyboard and you start writing this section, your work should already be done, because the hard part here is not writing this section. The hard part here is finding the people before you get to the point of writing. I cannot emphasize enough that you must build a good team, a diverse team with diverse skill sets to be able to be successful. When we look at your team capabilities, if it looks like you are a one-trick pony, you're one note, it's going to make us concerned about whether or not you're actually going to be able to execute on this idea and execute on the proposed solution well. The success in this program is not um, is not always directly tied to the discrete skill sets of the team members, particularly technical skill sets. So what I'm trying to say is that we have had teams that are highly skilled. No one would question their level of skill, and yet they flounder, and yet they have great difficulty in executing on their idea. And we have had other teams that have had very rudimentary skills, or maybe no experience whatsoever in AI before, but they have been highly successful because they have had a diversity of talent across their team. And each one of them, it's called the zone of proximal development, each one of them was able to gain the skills necessary to ratchet themselves up a little bit and be highly successful in what they needed to do. It wasn't 5 computer science majors who also had to learn marketing and presentation and user experience design and project management. Those things are outside of what you can learn in the short period of time you have. But if you have those individuals and you have a computer science person, maybe they just haven't done much in the way of AI before, they can learn that. They can gain those skills. That marketing person can learn how to present. That project manager can learn how to do an agile design project management for the team. That UX designer can learn about customer discovery and design thinking and build those skill sets. What I'm saying to you is the most important thing is to build that diverse team now. Then, when you sit down and write this section, reference those roles. Reference that individual who's the team lead. Reference that individual who's the tech lead. Reference that individual that's taken on that design responsibility. Reference that person who's going to be responsible for the presentations and the like. And that lets us know that you've got those things covered. Now, what I want to be clear on is that does not mean I've got 4 things listed here, 4 different roles. That does not mean that you have to have 4 people on your team. Maybe you've got one person who's got 2 of these in the bag and another person who has the other 2 in the bag. That's okay. These are roles, not people. And sometimes you can have highly talented people that can encompass multiple roles, and that's okay. Probably our most successful duo throughout all the challenge, 2 years in a row, they were in the top team. They won $15,000 with a team of 6 one year, and then they won $17,000 as a team of 2 the next year. It was just that they were able to cover multiple roles between the 2 of them, and were highly skilled. And then finally, if any of your members have a personal interest in the topic, and you didn't mention it up in that first section, you can mention it here. especially if you're doing something in the health sector and family has you're doing something related to cancer identification, and one of your team members, has family members who have gone through that horrible experience. You can mention in this section, and again, that helps us understand why your team is doing what they're doing, and might be a motivating factor. So this is another good place to put it. You're short on space, so don't mention it in both necessarily, but if you didn't in the first section, mention it here. The final section is use of AI technologies. Now, this one confuses a lot of people. A lot of people stumble on this, especially the 300 words. Uh, a lot of that has to do with the fact that the Nittany AI Challenge tends to attract a lot of comp sci and IST students. That I don't know if I see. Okay, some of you, those of you who I know, you do have that background. So this is very often a comfort area for you guys, and you're used to diving into the details. But this is a place where I don't want you to get too stressed out about the details. I don't need you to describe um, and diagram for me your entire infrastructure and how you're going to build this and what your server structure is going to be like. I don't need to know all that. I don't need to know the specific tools you're looking to use. What I do need to know is broadly, what types of AI technologies are you going to be using? Are you going to be leveraging natural language processing? Are you going to be building a neural net? Are you going to do data visualization? Are you going to use AWS suite of tools? Are you going to use something else? Doing computer vision? Are you doing geospatial data and uh, doing pattern recognition within geospatial data? What are you doing broadly? Don't worry about getting into the details. Reason being, when the rubber meets the road and you start doing this section is going to be thrown right out the window, because as soon as you actually start doing the real development, you have that oh shoot moment, um, and all of a sudden you're going to have to start changing all these things that you think you had locked in. That is just the reality of development. And we realize that, and I don't want you to spend a whole bunch of time telling me things that are not going to be relevant 3 or 4 weeks from now. Or even worse, you feeling locked into doing things a certain way. One thing here, though, is if you are using Watson and you're doing something in the health pillar, mention it in this section, because you want to make certain that they know you're eligible for the IBM Advantage, which if you don't know about that, you can look it up on the website. It gives you a certain advantage in being selected at this phase. So what are the criteria for review? Well, impact is number one. 5 points for this section. Each one of these sections is, the 4 criteria are equal points, 5 points. You can see all of this on the website. We've got the full criteria written up, and I'll give you the link in a minute. So what is your impact? How is it going to help a lot of people, and is going to help, or is it going to help them deeply? Impress me on that. This is that first section. That is what you're convincing me of, is will your idea have an impact? Feasibility. So sure, it's going to have an impact. Can it be done? Particularly in the health space, keep in mind that data is difficult in the health space. So if you're doing something in the health space, I highly recommend that somewhere in your proposal, you mention where you're getting your data from. That way I have an understanding that it is available and that we don't have to worry about that data being unavailable to you and you being at a standstill. Team capabilities, it's a whole section of the proposal, 5 points here, and it's basically, is your team capable of actually doing what you say you're going to do? And then finally, use of AI and machine learning technologies. And this one thing I want to point out is it's not just, are you using AI? It's, are you using AI in a significant or meaningful way? We have had teams before that came to us with an idea that they already had, that they've already worked on, that they've already been putting together, but it had no AI in it, and they wanted to be eligible for the challenge. So they're like, "Well, I'll throw a chatbot on there." And it's very obvious that the entire thing could work perfectly fine without any sort of artificial intelligence, and the chatbot was just kind of duct taped to the side of their original idea. Don't do that. Your AI application has to be meaningful to building the solution. It has to be a significant portion or a significant contributor to that final solution that you're proposing. How do you submit? So you got all this done. You've written it up. Now you have to actually submit it to us. And this year, compared to every year prior, you will be doing it in our Teams tool online. I'm not going to get into the full Teams tool because that's another webinar that I have done. It's available on our YouTube channel. But the Teams tool is also the submission tool for the idea phase. You will go to here, nittanyai.psu.edu. You will create a team. You will have each one of your members create profiles in the tool, and then you will click, once you have your idea in there, you can click on a submit button, and it will bring you to the form to be able to put in the 300 words in each one of those sections. Um, I would highly recommend that you don't wait until the last minute to go into the Teams tool and put your idea in. The whole idea of the Teams tool is to help you build that highly functioning team that I mentioned earlier. So go in there now, put your idea in, have all of your team members create profiles, and then leverage the team tool to be able to find new team members with the skill sets that you need. Again, I'm not going to get into details of how it works, but it's pretty self-explanatory once you go in there. So, couple final tips and tricks. And just get all these out here. First, do some market research. One of the things that I have seen teams fail to do is to do even some basic Google searching on their idea to be able to see either that their exact solution is already out there or that they have a fundamental misunderstanding of what the problem is. Do some market research. Google's your friend. Talk to some subject matter experts. You're at a wonderful university with lots of people with lots of expertise. Reach out to them and talk to them. Finish your proposal early and edit it a couple times. Just pop up a Word document, 4 sections, 300 words, type it out, and go back and have your team edit it a few times. Get letters of support from those subject matter experts you talk to. So one of the things you can do at the end of the proposal is you have an upload button where you can upload PDFs or I think just PDFs. Have any of those subject matter experts you talk to just write a 2-sentence recommendation saying, yeah, I talked to them about this idea and I think it's a pretty good idea. I'd be willing to continue talking with them. They're not obliging themselves to give you hours of their time every week. Just a couple words saying that they think it's a good idea and that they'd be willing to continue supporting you when you have questions. Get them to put that into writing, submit it with your proposal, and that is worth its weight in gold. Well, digital gold, Bitcoin. It is, it's really important, and it makes certain proposals stand out that otherwise would not have. Finally, or 2 last things, have others review your proposal. All the criteria are online. Everything that I give to my reviewers is up there online for all of you to see. Those criteria I just showed you. Give your proposal to some people, give them those criteria, have them read it, and score your proposal for you. Don't ask your friends, ask your enemies, ask the people who don't like you and will tell you the truth. Have them review your proposal for you and get their feedback and adjust it. This goes back to finish early and edit. That again is huge for being able to be successful in this. If you're in a class, ask your faculty member, your professor to do that for you. Most would be more than willing to do it. And then finally, we have this year for the first time teams from past years who are going to be holding office hours on February 11th and 12th. From, I don't remember the time, but if you go to nittanyai.psu.edu/events, you'll see all the details. They are willing to talk to you, read your proposal, and give you feedback. These are individuals that have been very successful in the challenge, who have won a ton of money, have had great success with their products. One is the Nian team that I used as the English language literacy example. Their solution is being used by students in Kenya and Ghana right now. Hundreds of students are using their application and gaining access to better lives because of what they built just last year. And some of their team members will be there to listen to you, your proposal, and give you feedback. There's a couple minutes off, but I'm more than willing to stay on for a few minutes if you have any questions. So, with all of that done, are there any questions that you have? Is there anything that I can help you with? And while I wait, I'll also mention that I've got recordings of the other short webinars that I've done on how to build a good team, how to compete in the challenge, and some other things up there already. You can see those on the YouTube channel as well.
Hey, Brad. Yeah, so I had a question.
Yep.
Yeah, I like that. I really like the presentation, but so I participated in the competition last year.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember me,
Yep.
but yeah, so it's just me. I'm trying like a similar idea. It's kind of based on the same technology, but a totally different implementation. Um, is that like with AI challenge, like accept not like a do-over, but like a similar idea to a previous year?
Yes. Yeah, as long as you had something distinct and hopefully you learned something in the process that you went, oh, I could have done it different, I could have done it this way,
Yeah.
and then integrate that. That's perfectly fine, 100%.
Okay. Okay. Awesome. And it's a brand new team as well. I'm the
Oh,
only
yeah,
returning member from last year as
yeah.
well.
No, that is perfectly fine.
All right. Awesome. Thanks, Brad.
Absolutely. So I'll say thank you very much. Appreciate you coming out tonight. If you do have any questions, one last thing I'm going to do is put my email in the chat. Never hesitate to reach out to me. If you have any questions whatsoever, I will help in any way that I can. Just shoot me an email. I'm also on Teams and the Discord, the Penn State Discord, and Slack, and I'm on a street corner with a sandwich board. I'm just about everywhere. If you need me, find me, reach out, let me know, and I will help you in any way I can. Okay. So thank you so much. Have a great night, and I'm looking forward to seeing your submissions.